Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome. My name is Sam. I am with the library. I'm in charge of programming, and I'm so excited that everybody's come out today for this, and why people are still settling in. We're here to talk about, and to Frank. Can I call you Frank or Mr. Loudin?
Oh yeah, Mr. Loudin.
Mr. Loudin.
You can be Frank with me.
Frank with me? Okay. I thought why people settle in, I came across an interesting article recently that I believe Edie wrote. It was 30 interesting facts about Frank Loudin. I don't know if you guys have read this or heard about it, but a few kind of jumped out at me, and I thought they were interesting.
Well, the first one is I'm a liar.
That's not here. So you are a liar.
But she doesn't know.
Well, maybe he didn't catch that part.
Oh, maybe not. So Frank sold over well over $1 million of his artwork in 65 years. That's pretty great, right?
Wow. I don't have a penny yet.
Kind of goes downhill from here. He landed an airplane as a navigator in a snowstorm on a highway in Utah.
Whoa.
That's pretty cool, right?
That was good.
That was good.
That's true.
He sat in front of President Gerald Ford at the Rose Bowl.
Great.
He flunked Spanish in college.
Oh, my mother would be upset.
That's what it says right here, yeah. Two more. Was a manhole sniffer for Southern County Gas Company in Beverly Hills. There's got to be a story there, right?
That sounds perverse.
And that's true.
That's true. And then I'm going to end on this one. You can tell me if this one's true. Frank consumed a dozen martinis one evening before dinner and passed out standing up.
They tell me I did that.
That's right. No martinis tonight.
My wife would tell you that.
Okay. But anyway, thanks for coming. I'm going to pass it over to Frank and to celebrate his book. Thanks to Edie for all of her help in this journey. It's very, very cool. I'm so glad that she could join us. I'm just going to read a little bit of an intro, and then I'm going to turn it over to Frank, okay? And then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. And then Jenny from Darville's has a bunch of books, so please buy them on your way out.
There's cookies too.
And there's cookies too. Chocolate chip cookies.
Well, that's the best part.
Okay, so yarns.
Oh yes.
This book and these stories are dedicated to my heritage as a son of a son of the hills of West Virginia, and to my dear wife who has allowed me the freedom to do what I love to do, that being a storyteller. Spinning yarns, so to speak. For 68 years I told stories in paint, dabbling colors here and there to represent a country back porch or a small burg, a grocery, a service station, a deserted gold mine's monumental headframe, a gaggle of geese in a shady lane, all close to the heart of Americana. I've retired my paints and brushes in exchange for a laptop computer and colorful verbiage. The purpose is the same. I think that's very nice. I dedicate this book to my dear Janie, who is gone now, but I still feel her support in all my endeavors and her gentle enjoyment of my corny metaphors. I write these in sheer pleasure, and I hope you will appreciate them in that spirit. Frank Loudin.
I was hoping nobody'd show up. Thank you. Wow, there's real people here. Well, I assume that you wanted to know how I got from painting to doing to writing. I went from a palette to a computer, so to speak, and I think I didn't just wake up one morning as Mark Twain. Let's put it that way. I've been working at it for a while. I have to go back to a little bit of history. As a little kid, I read the comics, and I had it. My cousin got a bunch of some volumes of, I think they were called the Great Books or something like that, and they had wonderful illustrations by N.C. Wyeth and Howard Pyle, and these are all famous artists that you all recognize. And Hayden Sundblom did the Coca-Cola Santa Claus that they're still using, and that really impressed me as a little kid, and I wanted I didn't draw or anything, but I wanted to be an illustrator, story illustrator. My daddy was a Methodist minister, so he told lots of, he was a very good storyteller, and in fact his sermons always had a laugh to him. He wasn't fire and brimstone or anything. He was a dear man. And he used to tell me Peter Rabbit stories every night, but he took Peter Rabbit places where no man had gone before. Peter Rabbit was on the introduction, and he brought in all his people from the hills, Grandma Saucy and Uncle Gid Cutright, and all these people became characters to this little boy. I was a cute little guy, by the way. You can see by the pictures. Anyway, so I wanted to tell stories, and I liked art. But in high school, art was a schmaltzy thing. I liked girls and basketball, but I didn't want to go to art class because all the weirdos went to art class. So I kind of shined it off. But then when it came time to do the senior, what do you call them? The yearbook. And I did some little, I hate to even say it, they're really awful little cartoon figures in the yearbook, and that they were published. Wow, I'm a published artist. That really gave me a thrill. So I went to college. I went to the wrong school because their art program wasn't what I wanted. All the teachers were modern artists. They love, I wanted to do beautiful girls and airplanes and boats and things. And speaking of beautiful girls, I never could do that. But my first class in college was life drawing, and I didn't know it. I'd never been to a life drawing class in my life. I didn't know it. Well, I didn't know much about it. But they gave you a list of things you're just supposed to bring. A sheet of newsprint and charcoal and a soft pencil and doodad. And all these other kids were all from, I went to University of Colorado, so all the other kids were from Denver, and I was from Podunk, New Mexico. And so I was sitting there I got all set up like a real art student and was sitting there, sharpening my pencil. I looked up, this cute co-ed came out and took all the clothes off. Wow, I did this is what I want to do. I had, through my career in art school, I must have gone to, I don't know how many classes in life drawing, and I never could catch it up. I can do rusty fenders and falling down barns and weeds and pine trees. And I used to go to a cowboy art show yearly, and all the artists there were cowboys. I mean, they were really cowboys, and had artists secondly. And I started trying to do horses. The horses fell in the same category as the girls. I couldn't do it. I was so pitiful that the guy that ran the show said, "Frank, we know you're not a cowboy. Don't try to fool us." I had a hat, I got underslung boots, and I had a big silver buckle, and the whole thing. And I tried to walk like John Wayne would, and the guy that directed the show told me, said, "Loudin, how much do you pay for that hat?" And I said, $25, and he gave me $25 and said, "Throw that thing away." Anyway, I learned I kind of took it on my own because it was hard when I got out of art school, there were no more magazines, they didn't do illustrations anymore. And so I was kind of like the guy that invented the buggy whip. There's no more buggies. There's no more illustrators. They're all doing photography. The evil beast put me out of work. Anyway, so I kind of took it upon myself to be an illustrator by doing paintings that I really like to do, old barns and and rusty fenders, and I could do airplanes and ships and boats and stuff like that. And I got a job, I don't know if you got a chance to look at this stuff up here. I got a job at an architectural art studio in LA, and there's where I really learned to paint. We take blueprints from an architect and make it and do a rendering of their building, their proposed building. They could use for publicity and to raise money and whatchamacallit. And I learned to do that really well. And then one day I realized my wife, my dear wife told me, said, how much do they get for those the paintings that you do? And I said, well, gee, I don't know, $2,500. And how much did they pay you? I said, $1.98. So dear Jenny, she convinced me, said, you're going on your own. I said, okay. And so I resigned after 8 years of learning how to paint really well, I thought. And well, I did. I knew how to draw the most difficult house or building you could think of. So I did skyscrapers and mobile home parks, and this was in LA. And at that time, the architecture's business was really booming, and so I got right in on that, and I had more work than I could handle. But after a while, it got kind of boring doing that over and over. The same, trailer. I don't know how many trailer parks I did. Oh, for Christ's sake, no more trailer parks. But I was good at it. And I made money. But Jenny didn't want to keep her job at the bank, so she said, "You gotta do something else." So I started painting in LA, outside of LA, a lot of old mining camps and some ghost towns. And Randsburg was an old ghost town, perfect place for old buildings. And I knew how to paint buildings, baby. I knew how to do all that stuff. So I just took all the new ones and made them really old and started doing little paintings, like cute little Sunday afternoon paintings. And so Janie again said, well, you have 3 paintings, take them down to Laguna Beach and see if you get in a gallery. And I thought, Laguna Beach? That's the art center, of Southern California. And she said, go, put your suit, put your tie on, get it done. And I went down, I had no idea. I toured all the galleries, I've been in them, and wishful thinking and everything, but I didn't have the guts to say anything. But this time, Jenny forced me to take 3 little paintings, they're about that size, and I wanted $75 a piece for them, including the frame that I'd made out of scrap wood in the garage. And I walked in this gallery, and it was really a nice gallery, but every painting in there was huge, and they're breaking waves, crashing on the rocks. And I mean, I didn't belong in there at all, but there it was. And so I stood there while the guy sold a $3,500 oil painting of a crashing wave. And so I had my little paintings leaning there against the wall, and I thought, he's never going to take my little paintings. And my angel came from somewhere and said, how much are those? And the guy looked at me and said, how much are they? I said, well, $75. And he said, $75? And she said, I'll take 2 of those. And I had the chances of me being there with that lady, it's just unreal. And so she wasn't a relative or anything. She was just, it sounds like it was set up, but it wasn't. It was a real thing. I'm being frank this time. So that really encouraged me. He must have, in the next 5 years, he must have sold maybe 200 or 250 of my paintings at my price, and so that got me started doing. Then I quit the architecture stuff because that was boring, and shifted into calling on galleries, and I finally got accepted by the art world in Southern California, and really started making a living at doing that, and just about the time I got, we began. Jenny and I both we became hippies. Our family thought, well, you're becoming hippies. We moved to Catalina Island. I gave up all my clients, everything, and moved to Catalina with the idea that I'm going to paint Catalina, sailboats and stuff. And I did do a lot of sailboats, because that's where there's no place else to go from LA. It's just Catalina Island. So they came, and I got to know them, and they all had lots of money, and they were egotistical, and they wanted to. Every boat I had to make a little bit longer than it really was, and the sail just perfect. And this one guy, he had a sailboat. He had a photograph of it, and it had they call them lines. They're ropes to me, but their line was swinging out like that. And I thought, how graceful that line is. So I very carefully put that line in, and he saw the paint and said, "Oh my God, what is that line doing?" And I thought, it's in the photograph. He said, "Oh, my friends will just kill me for not having that line secured." I thought, oh. So I took it. Oh, it was really a pain in the neck to take it out, but I got it out. I had to paint seagulls over it. Anyway, so I got so I could do paintings pretty well, and I was doing well in the galleries, and so he moved up here and kind of left all that behind, but we loved coming to Orcas, and so I kind of lost touch with the art world, and then just I have to get one example. This example over here is one painting I did of a place in Missouri, I think. I'm not sure. It's from a photograph that I took. That's a real place, and it attracted me. The sign, Poor Boy John, a rainy day, reflections, and all that stuff, and I got to the point where I created my own. You tell me about a back porch in Georgia. It's not like a back porch in Montana. And I became an expert on alleys. Jenny followed me everywhere, and we would. Every little town we went to, I said, "I've got to go up the alley here," and we'd take pictures of garbage cans and tire swings, and I for some reason I knew how to paint mail pouch tobacco signs on the barns, and I was kind of an alley rat, and that's what I painted. And people bought it; they loved it, and so I started naming them codes and things. And I was in a couple art shows, and the gal that ran the show told me, "You have to, if you put your painting up on this wall, it's like dropping your pants in public. You have to stand there next to it and take the compliments, and you have to take the abuse, but stand there and talk." And I found that to be true. If you open a conversation with somebody, they're standing there looking at the painting. I got some stories. Well, I diverse, but I'm a storyteller. I was at this show, and I had a big painting, like that of an old Air Force trainer. It was beautiful yellow, and was sitting out in the weeds behind the hangar. But it was a big yellow airplane, and these two young ladies came by. I swear to God, she had a roll of $100 bills that big, and she was just going, "What are these?" What it was, and so they were looking at this airplane painting. So I went up and I said, "Are you interested in airplanes?" And they said. She said, "No, we just like it because it's yellow and it matches my couch." But she bought it, so why do I care? That happened so many times. Anyway, I started, to me, a painting, it was an additional enhancement to the painting to name it something really colorful and cogent. I had a dear friend who painted beautiful paintings, and she called them Serenity, for Christ's sake. Every one of them was Serenity, or Tranquility. I think, Joni, come on, paint. Don't you feel something when you paint this? Because you're a wonderful painter. Call it something that's poetic. So I started doing that. I became they call me the King of Schmaltz, because I named my paintings something. And this one is called Mutual Support, because the history of this thing is, I've written a novel about this, by the way. It'll be published next year, maybe. I got a few corrections, but the idea of mutual support is the fellow that opened the little produce stand started out as a victory garden. I think most of you guys aren't old enough to remember victory gardens, but during World War II, that was the thing. Everybody grew tomatoes in their flower pots, and it was a victory garden. Anyway, this guy came home from World War II and started growing a victory garden next to this old building. And I have no idea if this is true, because I just took a picture of it and left town. And I was safe. I didn't do anything bad. I just was on the way. And so the market, the big building is a boarding house where people, mostly bachelors and bachelorettes, live, and they have a boarding table, and they feed really well. I don't know if they still have boarding houses, but well, a whole nother story. I lived in one in LA for a while. Oh, anyway, you meet interesting people there, which gave me an opportunity to use my imagination and write about this boarding house. Because everybody I met, Janie would point out and say, that'd be a good person for the boarding house. Put them in there. all kinds of people, like, look around. We're all characters, every one of us. And you get at a boarding house and you mingle with other people. And I had good guys and bad guys. There was an evangelist and a couple of hookers. One time had this sounds like the rabbi and the alligator went in the bar and that kind of story. Anyway, so I started calling them my paintings really cogent names that were colorful. And as an addendum to that, I got I can't just settle one word. So I called it mutual support. But then there's a whole paragraph written that enhances the feeling of that painting. So I started doing that with all my paintings. I used to get ready for an art show, and Jay and I sit around. I do maybe a dozen paintings, unnamed. And she was good at this. We'd sit around and have a glass of wine or two and start naming paintings. But it's a wonderful experience because some of them were unprintable, but after 3 glasses of wine, they got a little bizarre. Anyway, but we got some good names. So this paragraph, there's a lot of thought behind doing the paragraph. It may seem simple to you, but I tried to make it something very cogent to the painting, and yet give us a spirit of the painting beyond the imagination, beyond what I've shown there. But my paintings, some people say you're like Norman Rockwell. I said no, not at all. He painted all people. I never paint people, but all my paintings have the people are just around the corner where there's a light in the window, there's smoke coming out of the chimney. I don't do empty houses or empty barns. I do it with a hint that this is a going concern. There's a bicycle or a car in front or a dog out in the backyard. So I don't, because an empty house is a sad thing to me, and I don't want to do a picture of sad things. So I started making these paragraphs, and then Janie joined a writers group here in Orcas, and she was having so much fun. I said, I want to go to the writers group. And so I said, what am I going to write about? So I said, I'm just going to take that sonnet. I call them sonnets. I have no idea what a sonnet is. Could be something you play on a lute, maybe. Anyway, what is a lute? is that a little thing that eats the roots out of your tomato plants? Anyway, I took this paragraph and it turned out to be, I think it's about 450 pages long now, because I started writing about the people that came to the boarding house, and we met every Wednesday night, and I had to have something new every Wednesday night, so I dreamt up a retired cop and a couple of what do you call it? People like birds. Bird
watchers.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach. No, well, anyway, there were two people that were bird watchers, and I described them. They were delicate little things that kind of tweet, tweeting, and they come to the table and they tweeted, they picked at their food, and then one of them was named, he was named Audubon, and her name was Ariel, and I thought, stuff like that is, people like it, so I started doing that. So like I said, I didn't just wake up to be Norman or to be Mark Twain. I have a deep background in writing little sonnets, and I've written, it said somewhere I did $1 million worth of artwork. I always tell Jenny, I said, what did you do with all that money? It took me 65 years, so that's not figured out by the hour, and it doesn't come out very well. Anyway, so I started writing stories, and I began to, just for the fun of it. And then I had a problem. I had arthritis and stuff, and I couldn't paint anymore. So I don't really paint anymore. And so I thought, well, I can use the computer. So I'll just concentrate on my writing stories. So that's what I do now, and it's a lot easier than mixing paint and all that framing and all that stuff. I just write stories. So I did that in my spare time, and I have quite a few stories. And so I thought, well, somebody said, why don't you put them together in a book? So I selected, with the help of my editor, Edie. Is that what you are? Very good friend, editor, publisher, whatever. And some other, and Jill Willen, we talk about writing yearly. And we have a good, it's kind of creative, and once in a while we get around to writing, we just kind of gossip. But I don't know where I was on that. That's
Putting them
that's
together.
the total. Like I said, I was thinking this morning. I didn't wake up to be Mark Twain. I said, God, I'm glad to be awake at all. I'm 93. I'm 93 years old. I'm lucky to wake up. And so that's my story. And I during the book was a culmination of some of the dreams I've had, and I have more. We have another one we're working on. Got Christmas stories, Christmas yarns. Yarns, for you people who don't know, yarns is kind of a hillbilly name for a lie or a tall tale. They don't lie. They're Christian. They don't lie. So that's my story. Anybody want to ask me something?
Yeah. Now, you say you didn't paint houses with people, you didn't paint people in the houses, but what about the little people that got in your painting?
Oh, the little people? There was you remember, old timers here remember Mary Parkinson? That ring a bell?
Yeah.
I'm older than I thought. She was a cute little lady that she had a gallery where Barnacles is, that little white building. And so she had a couple of my paintings there, and then she decided to have she was kind of a fairy herself. I mean that respectfully. But she decided to have a show featuring magic and fairies and that kind of stuff, and butterflies and petunias. And she said, would you want to be part of it? And I said, well, sure, I'll do something. So I gave her two. I made a castle out of a stump or something, and and mine sold just like that. And she said, do you have any more? And I said, no, but I know where I can get some. So she said, let's have a show of, if you want to, we'll have a one-man show of Jenny and I call them, we're looking for a name for my fairy stories. We call them Ferla, F-E-R-L-A. And that refers to my niece, Leslie, some of you know, who, when she was a little girl, when she couldn't pronounce something or didn't know what something was, she called it a Ferla. She said, is that a Ferla? Anyway, so we couldn't think of a name for this because you try to think of a new name for something, well, go to the Library of Congress or a patent office, and that's been used 38 times. That's the reason I call it the book Yarns. And while people think I have a knit shop, I got a call. I got a call about a knit shop. I said, no, I'm not a knit shop. I knit wit, maybe. Anyway, what was the question again? Oh, the little people. Well, I'm a strange fellow. I see little people. Yeah, I have. And old stumps, mossy stumps, or out in the snow, or at night when the moon is full, and all that stuff. It's real if you're, not quite right. And if you want to, you have to believe, as Peter Pan once said. I think you have to believe, and you'll see fairies. Yeah.
I believe.
Well, it's more fun that way, I forget under what circumstances when people say, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I make people happy."
Yeah.
And if it's furlough or rusty truck or barn or things like that, I had a commission from a fellow once. It was a young guy, and he gave me a really bad little photograph about that big of a house. The house was, I'm not kidding you, it was about that size. Can you do me a painting? I said, well, yeah. So I said, what color is it? He said, I have no idea. And I said, well, thanks a lot. Where is it? And I said, well, it's in Tennessee. And I said, I've been everywhere except Florida, but Jenny and I traveled around all over the country looking. Like I said, we went down the alley and I took pictures of barns and old tractors and things that I really like, Americana, and it's still there. If you'd look down the blue highways, they're still there, but they're all different. So I knew what this guy's house. I said, well, it's dark, so it's probably dark green. They painted them green, painted the barn red. If they painted that, West Virginia didn't know paint. They didn't have barns either. My dad, I diverse again, but that's what I am. My dad lived up in the hills. I guess on the eastern end of West Virginia. And it's funny, West Virginia is only about that big, but they divert. My mother said I never would go to the southern part of the state. Well, it's only 50 miles, but she would go because those people, they're coal miners. And my mother was a farm girl. My dad lived really in the hills, and they literally didn't wear shoes. But my dad graduated from Boston University, which made everybody proud. And we'd come. I diverse again, don't I? What was the question? Anyway, well, never mind. Well, there's another question.
A little picture of a little house in Tennessee.
The what?
Picture of a house in Tennessee that you were supposed to be.
I can't.
The little green house with the red barn.
Oh, the house and barn. Oh, yeah, that's where I was. Anyway, I painted the house. It was a painting about like that. And the reference material was nil. Just, I had two windows in the door. And it was really simple, but it was dark, so I knew it was probably green. So I painted it, and the foreground was just weeds, so I put a road down coming down the foreground, you have artistic license, and I put a puddle in the road, the Frank Loudin puddle in the road. You can look at my paintings, and 90% of them have puddles in the road. I fit right in behind the post office, wouldn't I? Anyway, I put a puddle in the road, and this fella came in. And when you do a commission, it's a big risk. Yeah, sure is. Because you could spend all that time, and I've been burned a couple of times. So I painted a rich guy's boat, and his wife didn't think it was long enough, and so he refused to pay me for it. And I thought, well, you son of a bitch, I'll fix you. And I divorced again, but this he came to Catalina a lot, and everybody knew him. He had money, and he showed it off, and everybody knew him, and he was popular along the yacht club, do it all day. And so he wouldn't pay me with the painting, so I put it in the window of my gallery. I had a little gallery right on the front street, so all these people come by. And so I put his painting in the window. And people would come by and say, oh, is that, I won't use his name, is that old Jack Black's boat? And I said, yeah, that's the famous da-da-da-da. And he said, oh, how come it's in the window? I said, well, the son of a bitch wouldn't pay me for it. So I bad-mouthed him all over town. Where did I go with that story? I don't know, any more questions?
When did you meet Jan and get married?
What, I have to tell that?
Well, sure.
It was a blind date.
Yeah. Okay.
Jenny and I was sniffing manhole covers in Beverly Hills. I got to tell you about that. It really was. I worked for the Southern Counties Gas Company, and they had an instrument, a gauge-like thing, with a long pipe on it, and we'd go up and down the streets in Beverly Hills and other places, and you stick the pipe down in the manhole cover, and if it smelled like gas, the guy said, okay, boys, dig over here. And so we'd dig up the street. I dug up I dug up Glenn Ford's yard. And Glenn came out and looked at me. Said, what do you, yeah, we dug up some of the fanciest yards in, Brentwood is a snooty part of Beverly Hills. We worked in Brentwood, digging up movie stars' front lawns. Anyway, that's what and it really was a manhole sniffer, because we'd have one guy who said, I never got to handle that machine. I was just a digger. But the guy that ran the group was the man who decided where to dig. He'd just draw. Okay, boys, dig right here. We've got to be that wide and down till we hit a pipe. And I like doing that. That's funny because I was a college graduate, and I was an officer. I'd been an officer in the Marine Corps, and and in LA at that time you couldn't get a job doing anything. I tried to get a job as a parking lot attendant, and they'd say, "Well, you have a college degree and yada yada, and you're overqualified." I said, "Yeah, but I'm starving, overqualified, starving." So that's the reason I got a job at a gas company, and in fact, they told me after a while. They wanted to send me to school to learn to lead, to be the guy, to be the sniffer, and draw the men. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that, because if I get a job in the art field, I'm taking it. And they said, okay, you got 2 weeks' notice. So here I was so good that they wanted to promote me, but then they fired me instead. So anyway, Janie, at that time. She was living with her parents in Laguna Beach. She was recently divorced. She married a high school sweetheart, and that didn't work out. So we were in our mid-20s, and I didn't have any money, but I was working, and so the fellow that I was rooming with started dating Janie's sister, and they kept saying, "Frank, you've got to meet Janie. You got to meet Carol's little sister." Are you kidding? You're going to go with your roommate's you're going to go on a date with your roommate's little sister? No way. And they were telling her this. In fact, I met her mother before I met Janie. And her mother said, "Oh, you got to meet Frank." And Janie said, "Are you kidding? Somebody that my mother likes? How is that going to work out?" So we fought it for 6 months. And finally we said, okay, it was Thanksgiving Eve. It said, we're going to meet. Janie was home. This was in Laguna Beach, which is a romantic place to begin with. And so I was down there visiting my roommate's mother and had Thanksgiving dinner, and said, okay, after dinner, I'll go meet Janie, meet this person. And so I went up, and they had a house full of guests, and they knew all these guests knew what was going on. I walked in, they were just like this. They all shut up. And they wanted to see how it worked. And Jan was sitting way over there, and I walked in the front door, and well, the other people all, like this, and Jan was over there, so I walked across the room and sat down. Jenny had beautiful knees, I remember that. She's sitting there with her legs crossed there. She has long, beautiful legs. And, so I walked over, and I can't believe I said this. I walked over and I sat down. I couldn't think of anything to say. It was embarrassing. I said, well, tell me, Jan, how many words a minute do you type? And it worked. I've been using that in bars up and down the coast. Everybody looked at me like I was an idiot, but Jenny accepted that. And so I knew, well, this is a girl for me. And we never looked back. That was it. You asked, didn't you?
Yeah, that's close.
Thanks a lot. Anybody else? I have an intelligent question. Oh, there you go.
This is a question, but are you going to read?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to point out some things about
read
this book.
From that book.
Read
That's
the
a
Ruth.
good book.
The Ruth June.
Yeah, that we have. In fact, I have my other agent over there, my field agent over there, with a stack of books and a big smile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do the
Writing
Ruth
the book.
June. Ruth June.
I have a kind of, I guess you call it a style, interesting things. And I just read a couple of things. I like to start a chapter with, I seem to be starting chapters with the weather, like the weather this morning. And then I end up with the weather. Or I like to start with a comment and then end up with a comment that justifies the first comment, if that makes sense to you. So we were at a place in down on the coast of Oregon, and it's a morning. Jenny and I loved teaser-like places everywhere we went, and they're all over. So this was the Morning Glory Cafe, and I mean the US 101 goes right by the Morning Glory Cafe. The spray and the dirt clods from the rumbling 18 wheels of the continuous parade of loggers and chip trunks splatter across the narrow sidewalk, settling on the front porch, and two tiny patio tables and a coat of fine umber-colored film. And then, at the end of the story, it said, anyone who shows up now is another vintage, not so prone to conversation, to lingering discussion tomorrow, and there will be the same faces, and another lumbering chip truck went by and put another coat of film on the table out in the patio. I like to tie it together. It's only 8 pages long. Then I like to start out with sometimes start out with a situation. In a story you like to have kind of a beginning, and then you have a problem, and then you solve the problem, and everybody's happy ever after, if that's the kind of story you're writing. Anyway, I used to go to my daddy being a preacher got invited to camp meetings. I don't know if you know what that is. It's kind of a religious get-together, and it's out in the hillside someplace, and this was in New Mexico, and this one really happened. And anyway, no, this didn't happen. This is about Ruth June. I'll read about Ruth June in a minute. There was a Ruth June, but this didn't happen. Anyway, this is how the story began. It was lunchtime, and they were all sitting under the double green fly of the dining tent, pretending that nothing had happened. Maybe nothing had happened, but they had seen what they had seen. And so then I described the people and what happened. And Ruth June was I'll read about Ruth June. She was part of it, and you'll have to get the book and read the story to find out what Ruth June was. Anyway, Ruth June was an adult with an IQ of a recalcitrant 7-year-old and the personality of a roll of barbed wire. She was built like one of those balloons on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. She always wore a blue denim tent-like dress that came just below her knees, so that her pink trunk legs showed traces of black hair. Were comparatively tiny feet, and white tennis shoes gave the appearance of floating. Her face was fixed in a permanent scowl, with her lower lip protruding under a fat nose and squinty eyes. Don't you love her? They watered a lot, showing stains down her chubby cheeks. Her mop of black hair had been cut short like a boy's to keep her from chewing on it. But there really was a Ruth June. I'm not making this up. She was scary. Then, something else that I like to do. Most of you have read my teaser stories, and there's 10 chapters of teasers in here. And this is from Mark Bledsoe's approval. I did this. I sent it to him, and before Carolyn died, I sent them, and they laughed. They said, I never used anybody's full name in my teaser stories, but I used the first name, and Mark said, I know you can't fool me. I know who all these people are. I just say Bob, and I use my own. I'm self-deprecating in all my stories, because if I'm going to make fun of anybody, it's myself, and that's successful because I can handle that. Anyway, nearly all my teaser things started with a weather report, and like the sliver of a moon played around a patch of broken fog along the ridge of Turtleback Mountain, as a lone 67 Chevy pickup truck drifts through the stop sign in front of Teasers and pulls up to the no parking zone. You know, the no parking zone around the corner. There were guys, you'd sit there, they did, and we're watching. We always had a table where we could see who was going to the post office and who came through the stop sign. And there always, this guy in this pickup truck, he never stopped. He wasn't going very fast, but he just drifted around the corner and parked. You know, it's a sign that said, absolutely no parking. He'd pull right up next to it and come in to tease. Well, he was a guy, I don't know him, but you didn't want to, I wouldn't want to question him. As you can park where you want to, mister. Okay. Let's see what else I mark here. I have a neat story. This reminds me of something. Do you ever call 911? I mean, seriously? And say, my house is on fire? And anyway, I had occasion to, and we lived in a little town called Carrizozo, New Mexico, and the people would say, what is that near? I said, Carrizozo's not near anything. Maybe the moon. But my dad had respiratory problems, so the Veterans Administration recommended that he go to a drier climate. And boy, did we do that. We moved from West Virginia to New Mexico, the desert New Mexico, and it really probably lengthened his life for 10 years after we moved to New Mexico. Anyway, one day my dad and I I forget why, we were driving past this guy's house, and we saw smoke coming out from behind the fence. And so he said, go check that out. And so I went in, and there was kind of like a scrap wood pile, and it was burning. Well, that wasn't so bad, but there was a 55-gallon drum of something right over the fire. And I thought, oh man. So he said, run to the fire station, because the fire station was only around the corner. I went into the fire station, these two guys were sitting there yawning. And I said, there's a fire down. No. And he said, aren't you the preacher's kid? I said, but the preacher's going to blow himself up if you don't get over there in a hurry. The funniest thing that happened, that wasn't funny, but the funniest thing that happened was across the street from there, Martha Miller. I was always in love as a kid. Martha Miller, she didn't know it, but I was in love with her. And the fire engine came, and they laid hoses out, and they put the fire out and everything. But during the process, I was standing there. I saw Martha Miller standing over on the sidewalk watching, sweet little self. And I thought, Martha Miller's watching. So I ran over and grabbed a hose and picked it up and started running toward the fire. It wasn't hooked to anything back there. I almost went right into the fire. I was running like expecting water to come out and expecting the end of the hose. And anyway, well, let's see, what else do I have?
It's great, time.
Well, one of my favorite stories here, that I won't read about that, but
By the book.
how are we doing for time? Am I out of time?
You're done.
I'm done? Thanks a lot, Dan. Did
For my chopped liver?
somebody wake you up?
5.
Well, anyway, do you have any more questions?
What's your favorite story in there? Do you have a favorite
Well,
story?
my favorite one, I think, is it's a trip to the Huevos Rancheros trip to New Mexico Jay and I took. That means the most to me.
Okay.
We ate in some places you wouldn't, Jay. I went in this awful place, and we ordered Huevos Rancheros, and Janie said, I'll take mine with, a piece of bread. And I said, well, I want mine with chorizo. And Janie looked at me and said, you're going to die. I looked in the kitchen, here's this really healthy looking Chicano lady cooking. I told Jay, I said, see that cook back there? Everything she does is cauterized because it's so hot. I swear the waiter came over to us. He must have been in the Navy because he had a pack of Luckies rolled up in his shirt sleeve. And he put his foot up on the table next to her in a booth. He put his foot up and said, y'all from around here? And he had a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. You don't have to make, if you look at stuff, it's all around. I don't have to make that up. It happens. and we did, back roads and places. I have some wonderful stories. I have some books yet. Books yet. I've got many stories, and lots of them are all of them are based on facts. But I'm able to sit down. I never have had writer's block because I have a strange memory. I remember things, and I think because I took a lot of photographs. Every time I took a photograph, it clicked in my head, and I remembered. I can tell you where I took that photograph. I can't tell you, for some reason I can't remember that one, but I remember. Hundreds of photographs. I can remember where I took them. So, and I can remember what it was like and what the day was like, and did the dog chase me off the property or whatever. I had some interesting stories about that. But anyway, time is up.
Yeah.
Well, please keep the stories coming.
You were supposed to go like that.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did? I didn't look.
Thank you, Mr. Loudon.
Thank
Go
you.
buy his book. Thank you, Bob.